Okay. Our Chair Riggs has told us that he'll be late this evening, so I'm going to chair the meeting for the first part of it. Present, we have Commissioners Kale, Kennedy, Barnes, and DeCarty, and myself, so we do have a quorum present. Would staff like to read the introductory note for the record about how to participate in the meeting? We generally do that. Okay.
Yeah, Vice Chair Doran, this is Leo Tapio with staff. I'm happy to just clarify for those who are attending the meeting virtually. So during the public comment portion of the meeting, there should be a raised hand feature on your screen. If you go ahead and click on that, that'll notify staff that there is a comment that you would like to share. Otherwise, if you are listening in via telephone, if you do hit *9 during the comment period, that'll also notify staff that you do have a comment that you would like to share. Other than that, Vice Chair, that pretty much should take care of the public comment portion in terms of members of the public interacting with the commission.
Thank you. Ms. Sandemeyer, do we have reports and announcements?
Yes, good evening, commissioners. So there's a city council meeting tomorrow night at 5 p.m. and one of the items will be the adoption of purpose statements for the city subcommittees, as well as formal appointments to the subcommittees. That concludes my reports and announcements, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Do you have any questions from Ms. Sandemeyer? Okay, we'll move on. We can now take public comments. During this comment period, the public may address the commission on any subject not listed on the agenda and items listed under the consent calendar. Each speaker may address the commission once under public comment for a limit of 3 minutes. Please clearly state your name and address or political jurisdiction in which you live. The commission cannot act on items not listed on the agenda, and therefore the commission cannot respond to non-agenda issues brought up under public comment other than to provide general information. If you have a comment about something on the agenda, we will have an opportunity for public comments on those matters later in this meeting. Do we have any public comments? General public comments?
So again, just as a reminder for those who are attending the meeting virtually, there should be a hand icon feature on your screen. So go ahead and click on that if you do have a comment for an item not listed on tonight's agenda. And if you are listening via telephone, you go ahead and click *9 on your keypad. That'll also notify staff that you do have a comment. And at this time, Vice Chair, I'm not seeing any comments, but if you'd like, we can give it a minute or two.
We can give it a few more seconds.
Okay.
So still nothing?
I can confirm there are no comments at this time, Vice Chair.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Tapia. We'll move on. We have nothing under the consent calendar for this evening. So we'll move into the public hearing phase of the meeting. The first item on the agenda is a use permit for Zichen at 1925 Minalta Avenue. This is a request for a use permit to change the use of a tenant suite from a salon to a restaurant in an existing commercial building in the C2 neighborhood shopping district. Subject property is substandard with regard to the minimum parking requirements for the C2 district and requires a use permit for change of use. The project also includes a proposal for outdoor seating on the rear enclosed patio and the on-site sale of alcohol with the proposed Type 41 alcoholic beverage control license. Ms. Sandemeyer, do we have, who's going to present this tonight? Is it you?
Good evening, Vice Chair Doran. This is Chris Turner, Assistant Planner. I do have one update. We received one public comment, which is actually a correction to the staff report. Staff report notes that Dance du jour is currently vacant, but we received public comment that notes that Dance du jour is not closed. It is still within the tenant suite, and it's currently open a couple days a week. I have no other updates, but happy to take questions if there are any.
Thank you. Does anyone have questions for Mr. Turner? Looks like we don't. Ms. Sandemeyer, can you guide me? Do we typically take public comments before the presentation by the applicant or after?
I don't think there's a presentation for this one. But the applicant might want to say a few words first.
Okay. Do we have anyone here representing the applicant who would like to speak?
Hi, good evening. This is Matthew Sum from DD Square Architecture. Good evening. I can make some comment on behalf of the owner. So they originally have a sushi restaurant in River City, and they would like to expand their business to within the Menlo Park. So they are a well-known restaurant, and they want to open up a second one to help their serving the local residents. They are the tenant. I mean, the applicant himself, the owner himself, is also a Menlo Park resident. So they would like to expand into the local area with an additional one additional restaurant there to their business. I believe that they, as Chris had mentioned earlier, they have applied the alcohol license, and I believe the police department has approved the license already, so they are ready to go.
Thank you, Mr. Sun. Do any of the commissioners have questions for Mr. Sun?
Hi, Chris.
Vice Chair Doran?
Yes.
Yeah, it's
I didn't
Chris.
see you there. We have too many other windows open with people that aren't
No worries.
speaking.
I just have a quick clarifying question. On the back patio, it appears that it extends across the next door property. I just wondered, how is that configured? And if the
So,
next door property ever wanted a back patio, what would happen?
so the back patio is existing, even though the next door is existing, but they actually have a divider, a chain link fence in between that. I believe that is the case. So they never, I don't believe they ever cross on the back side. Let me open up the plans 1 second to help me memorize the project. But yeah, I think they have their own space divided. They never cross. If you look at the plan A100, if you have them, they actually, there's a chaining, a separation between two space in the back.
Yeah, I guess my question is, it looks like the space occupied by Dance du jour has no access then to the rear. Is that correct? It looks like the patio for this applicant extends across.
They do have access to the back from the open area. We just didn't drew up the plan with the door on their space. Let's see. Hold on. Just see.
Oh, hi, Commissioner Chris. I have the answer. In the back patio, my neighbor, they are able to access the back patio. But the owner of the building, they already got exclusive use for us to use.
Okay. Thank you very much. That's helpful.
Oh, my
Appreciate
pleasure.
it.
Yeah,
Thank you.
sure.
Do you have any other questions at this time? Okay, then I think, Mr. Tapia, we should open it up for public comment. We'll bring it back up for discussion.
Yeah, good evening, members of the public. If you do have a comment at this time, please feel free to click on that raise hand feature on your screen. Otherwise, if you are listening via telephone, go ahead and click *9 on your keypad, and that'll also notify a member of staff that you do have a comment. And at this time, Vice Chair Doran, I am seeing 2 comments, and with your permission, I will go ahead and introduce them.
Yes, please do.
Okay. So just as a reminder for those who will be making a public comment, if you can please state your first and last name and the political jurisdiction in which you live in or the city that you live in. And just note that you do have 3 minutes to share your comments. So at this time, I will go ahead and introduce the first speaker as they came in, and it is, one second. I'm having some technical difficulties.
Vice Chair,
Yes, Commissioner Kale.
you might want to get the name of the applicant who just spoke for the record.
Oh, okay. Do we still have the applicant, or could Mr. Sum provide the name for the record?
The lady who spoke is the owner of the restaurant, Joanne Wan.
You spell that for the transcript, please. Mr. Sum, is it W-O-N? Could you spell that for the transcript, please?
Joanne, Joanne, last name W-E-N.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Actually, I want to clarify. This restaurant will be under the owner. The owner will be under my husband's name. So I don't own any portion of this. So the owner will be under Z as in zebra, E as in elephant. Last name Chen, C-H-E-N.
Thank you.
Yeah, I am the owner of the other restaurant. So the assistant location of the other restaurant. So sorry for the confusion.
Thank you, Joanne.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, Vice Chair Doran, I am able to introduce the first speaker now. Thank you for the patience. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce the name that's listed here is Captivating Dance by Nona. But again, if you can please state your first and last name. Okay. Captivating, you should have the ability to speak now.
Do you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. On the planning commission plans, it said that my studio was vacant as well, and it isn't. We just have been doing
I'm
Zoom
sorry.
classes.
Could you state your name for the record, please?
Yes, Nona Yabara.
Could you spell that for our transcript, please?
Yes, Nona, N-O-N-A. Last name Yabara, Y, B as in boy, A-R-R-A. And I just wanted to confirm that my studio is not vacant. It says that that's what it was in the plans. And then the access to our back patio, I haven't heard anything about the restaurant using it or anything like that. And we actually still use it. So I just wanted to come on and say that we're still in business in all this. That's it.
Thank you. Mr. Turner or Mr. Tapia, do we have another public comment?
Yes, we do, Vice Chair Doran. I'm going to go ahead and introduce the next speaker. So again, this is the name that's listed here, but again, if you can please state your first and last name and where you live or the political jurisdiction. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce West Bay Cleaners. Should have the ability to.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, my name is Eric Ibarra, E-R-I-K, last name Y-B-A-R-R-A. I am the owner of West Bay Cleaners that is in 1921 Same shopping center, 1921 Minalto. My comment to this evening was partially what my wife just said, that her business still is there. But my main concern is parking, not only in the front, but also in the rear. I am very gung-ho and excited about another business coming in. I don't like the shopping center empty, but my concern is parking. I have seen several restaurants take over parking lots during COVID, and that would put a damper on our business, to be honest with you. I also use the rear parking lot for pickup and delivery services because I have a backdoor access. And that is the way that I do my my deliveries and stuff like that. That's how it goes in and out. Currently, the salon at the corner of the shopping center is using a back parking lot as she has a structure there that she's been cutting hair in the back just because she doesn't want people inside the building. So that is a pretty large structure in the back. So to count on parking for employees in the back, and I don't know if that's going to work with that structure back there. So yeah, so my main concern is parking. And that's really what I wanted to say.
Thank you. Mr. Tapia, do we have any other public comments?
Yes, we do, Vice Chair Doran. I'm going to go ahead and introduce the next speaker, Kathleen Daly. You should have the ability to unmute yourself now.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Kathleen Daly. I am the owner of Cafe Zoe at 1929 Minalto. And I do reside in I apologize, I have a puppy that's gonna be noisy. I do reside in Redwood City, but I spend a good portion of my time in Menlo Park. So I want you to know that as a business owner and I'm super supportive of this restaurant coming in. I'm a firm believer in the Willows needing more options for some great food. I think it helps all of our businesses to have, additional services for the residents of the Willows. I will say that I do think that it's a bit of a risk to assume that people won't be coming in from the outside. I think if I relied on just the Willows to keep the cafe open, I might not have made it. So you do need outside people coming in, and there's some great neighborhoods. Crescent Park is Palo Alto, other parts of Willow. We consider, the entire Bay Area our hood. So I think it's a little, I'd be a little cautious of assuming that just the Willows will keep your doors open. There were some assumptions made in some of the documents that concern me a little bit. I'm glad my two neighbors brought up their issues with the businesses that are not closed. I think we're making some assumptions because of COVID and all of the stuff that's been going on. And I think if things were back to normal, it will look a little bit different. And so my only message to all of this is there are some things that are already in place. And this application shouldn't push all of those to the side so that we can, but at the same time, let's work together and make room for them to come in, because I do think it's a value. But some assumptions without any conversations amongst all of us to try to just work together never happened. And I think we should do that before we just make sure that we're just all on the same page, because we all have to survive. We all have to come out of COVID and try to find a new normal. But the new normal might look a little bit different than what it has been. So I just wanted to make that as a comment. But once again, I want to say we're super excited to have them join us as neighbors. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Daly. Do we have any other public comments?
At this time, Vice Chair Doran, I'm not seeing any other comments.
Okay, I think people have had long enough to respond. So we should bring it back to the dais and see the virtual dais and see if we have comments from my fellow commissioners. I can see you all now. So Ms. Kennedy.
Yeah, two questions. Well, first, I think it's really exciting to get another restaurant over there. Question, with regard to the entire group of businesses in that on that parcel, currently I'm assuming, currently I'm assuming that the parking is kind of an honor code, right? So if you're going to the salon, you don't park in front of Cafe Zoe. If you're going to the supermarket, you don't park in front of, something else. Is it the case that there are not assigned parking spaces with each suite? That's question number one. And number two is, given that we're not, although we are, the state and the county and the country seems to be opening up, it is very possible that things could close down. So will this new restaurant have an option to open an outdoor seating area adjacent or in front of or in back of or somewhere close by to the restaurant to accommodate if we have to close or go to 20% capacity again? And then third, this is sort of piggybacking on the question that was asked in the first public comment about the salon owner who is cutting hair in the back parking lot. How will those, I'll frame it as temporary uses of those spaces, as common spaces, be addressed with this new business coming in? So what is what is mandated, what is not, what's honor system, what is not? Because I think any conversation around parking, and who's coming in from where, first has to understand what's the universe of parking there, adjacent to, and what is not heavily regulated around parking on the street. So I think those are some questions I have. And I probably should have said either to Chair Riggs or Vice Chair Doran, through the chair to staff.
I do want to just note for the record that Chair Riggs has joined us. If you don't mind, I will continue to chair this item until we come to a vote on it, since you weren't here for the whole discussion, and then I'll hand it over to you for the next item.
Of course, that's the proper way. Thank you, Michael.
Sure. So yeah, we've got three questions, I suppose, for staff. The first one might actually be a good question for the applicant, but maybe we can ask Mr. Turner first.
Yes, those are all good questions, and I'll try to go in order. So to my knowledge, the parking spaces on the front of the property, those are not completely within any one property. Property lines kind of cut through them. They're partially in the public right of way. So those don't technically belong to any one tenant space or property. The parking lot at La Hacienda Market, that is a private parking lot. Those spaces were historically dedicated to the market. As noted in the staff report, those the property owner of La Hacienda Market and the subject property, 123 to 129 Minalto, those were acquired by the same person, and they've given their the owner's given their consent for the businesses at 125 Minalto to use that parking space. The rear space, that is a shared use. There's a grant deed between the property, the subject property, and the property to the left. If you're looking at it from Minalto, they have, which would be the salon and the dry cleaner. They all have the right to use that back space as well. So As far as the outdoor seating option goes, as part of this proposal, one of the proposals is outdoor seating in that rear patio area. I'm not sure, as far as COVID goes, how that back space may or may not be used. Staff was certainly not aware of the use for the salon, but I have heard that there are some informal uses going on to try to keep businesses alive. A lot of the time, staff is unaware of those. I'm not sure if there's any sort of program similar to what's happening in the downtown district, where you can get a sort of a temporary outdoor use space for restaurants. Maybe Karina may be able to shed a little bit more light on that, but I think that's only happening in the specific plan area along Santa Cruz. Let me know if, actually, I was just informed that those outdoor permits, the temporary outdoor permits, are allowed citywide. So that is an option. I think that addresses all your comments, but let me know or questions, let me know if I missed anything.
No, you definitely addressed all of them. But I do think, playing devil's advocate here, that as we go longer into temporary allowances of uses of outdoor space, some things have become significantly permanent. And I'm just sort of trying to look at this more holistically. When you sort of measure, one neighborhood to another neighborhood and seeing what's happening, I think that particular suite of businesses is a much more classic blend than in a lot of other types of shopping center areas, right? So, and if it starts to lean more towards generalized food service with a much larger external footprint, whether permanent, by right, they have a back patio, or starts to spill out onto those first 8 feet of their, in front of their buildings, I think that starts to become a little interesting. I think it's a great project, but I do think that the world is dramatically different a year and 2 months into COVID than it was prior. And what has become a much needed path towards keeping one's business afloat has now become a pretty fantastic community amenity, all along. So yeah, I just think that we have to sort of navigate these spaces that are so close to residential areas, and that spillover, university over there in the Crescent neighborhood. That's all. I think it's a good project. So.
Thank you, Commissioner Riccardi.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you, Commissioner Kennedy. You had a lot of the questions that I did. From the public comment, I am curious to the applicant. Have you reached out and had any conversations directly with the business owners who share that, whatever we're calling it, that mall?
Sure. Hi, Commissioner Smith.
Yes.
Did you ask about any comment about?
My question is, have you had conversations with the owners of the businesses who spoke, who expressed some questions and concerns about parking or about working together in shared space? My question is, have you had conversations with them?
Yes, I did. For the parking, they allow the owner of the building. He allow us to use their parking lot. Belongs in the supermarket as well. But since it's
I think we lost the connection there for a minute. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
We lost you for a minute. We didn't hear what you said.
Yes, so I talked to the owner of the building, and he gave us the full permission to use the supermarket parking lot as well. So that one really helped our parking issue, because I see there were a lot of space in the supermarket parking lot. And yeah.
Yeah, so I appreciate that. That's not exactly my question. My question is not a conversation with the owner of the building, but a conversation with the proprietors of the other businesses, not Hacienda, but I believe we had 3 other owners who spoke just a minute ago. Have you had conversations with them?
I have a conversation with one of the owner, Cafe Soyi. Her name is Kathleen. And she's really welcoming us to share together of the parking lot. But I did not have the conversation with any other owner of the building yet.
Okay, thank you. I guess just a comment on that. It would be important for me at the end of our time here that one of the things that would happen is that you would have a conversation with the other proprietors. That shared parking lot that is in the back where it says employee parking is shared by many. And it sounds like there are some concerns about how best to use that space. It seems it's important for you all to work that out. So that's a comment. And then I have a question. And I guess this is for city staff. So the Hacienda parking lot, I think from the plans, we can see there are 14 spaces that are on the, whatever that is, the bay side of the unit that are devoted. They're off street and they're for Hacienda. It doesn't show the other side of the parking lot, but my guess is you just double them. And there must be about 28 spaces in that Hacienda parking lot that are right now for La Hacienda. In the front, it looks like there's 19 or 20 spaces total that can be used by 7 businesses along the front there, including Hacienda. So my question for staff is, how does this work? First of all, do we know the usage of the Hacienda parking lot? Has anybody presented to staff exactly how many freed spaces there are available? Number one, although I frequent that whole area, and so I know from my personal observation that it's frequently not that full. But the second question is, how is that going to work where 2 businesses can use the parking lot, but 5 or 6 businesses cannot? And what happens if the 2 businesses that can use the parking lot happen to have a whole lot of people that are parked in the front, and now the other 5 or 6 businesses don't have access to that parking lot? How do you as staff and as we think about traffic management and parking, how do we think about that? Or how did you think about that?
Yes, that's a question for Mr. Turner.
It is.
Yeah, so just looking at the plans again, it looks like there's 18 parking spaces in front. And the area plan shows about 30 parking spaces in La Hacienda parking lot. It's a little bit of a difficult question. This project didn't rise to the level. We spoke to the transportation division about this. It didn't rise to the level of needing a traffic impact study, a parking study. So it's difficult to really say exactly how many of those parking spaces are needed, or in La Hacienda, how many of those parking spaces are vacant and available at any one time of the day or during the restaurant's busiest hours. I did have a conversation. It sounds like since the owner of La Hacienda Market is the owner of the subject property, presumably he would allow all of his tenants to use that space and not just the restaurant. I did have a conversation. It sounds like he's also granting at least Cafe Zoe the right to use the parking space, the La Hacienda Market parking lot as well. So that's a tough question. I apologize. Presumably.
If I could have a follow-up on that, actually. Attachment E to the staff report is actually the letter email from the owner, who says that he authorizes the customers for Oh Baby Sushi to use the parking spaces at La Hacienda. But he doesn't mention any other businesses or say generally the businesses at 1925 Minalto.
Correct. The parking agreement given in the staff report is only says the Oh Baby Sushi. I did receive a voicemail over the weekend actually saying that that Cafe Zoe would be allowed to use the parking lot as well. That's something that we can potentially getting in writing. It would also make sense if they allowed the Dance du Jour to use that parking lot as well.
Thank you, Mr. Turner. I appreciate it. I would say that to me, it's very helpful to hear from the other proprietors that they are excited about this business joining, and that gives me a lot of confidence. But to me, this issue seems like it needs to be explicitly cleared up and in writing. And to me, it seems that not only is the only thing that's fair to all of the businesses that are there is to have access to the Hacienda parking lot, but it's also more fair to the customers. I go to West Bay Cleaners and I'm not allowed to park in Hacienda, but if I stop at Cafe Zoe, I am. And what's enforcement going to look like anyway? So for both of those reasons, I think it's really important to get this cleared up. I'm inclined to, I don't know what to say about this. Can we do that as a condition or something like that? But I'll pause for now. That's my only real concern. I'm supportive of the project, but I'm interested in other commissioners and how we address this.
Thank you, Mr. DeCardi. Commissioner Kennedy.
So I think the bigger concern here, sort of just building on this, is that but for looking at all of the lease agreements that determine how much parking goes with each unit, who is allowed to, these side deals, it's not, I think that's kind of uncool. But also, what is that, whatever we're calling it, it's a mall, it's a grouping of businesses, I don't know. It must have a certain number of allowed parking spaces available to it, right? So I think this project, I think the restaurant sounds like a great idea. I think, making sure that every business has access to what they are, they can have, that parking isn't being given away to other businesses to encourage a higher and better use. I think that is calls into question. So I don't think it's about the project at all. The project is great. I think the circumstances around the traffic and parking is what's at hand here, because we're not just subdividing whatever the total number of spaces is available by a certain number. And we're not even being told that the restaurant is X number of square feet, and based on this, based on how much square footage your establishment has, you get X number of spots. There is no math. right? So I think if we could clear that up, I think it would, it would feel better, but I don't think it has anything to do with the business, because this is a tenant coming in, right? It has more to do with the overall universe of what's available for parking. And then I will say nothing else on this.
Do we have any other commissioners that would like to speak? Well, I think I will interject then. I think that both Commissioner Kennedy and Accardi raise a good point, and we don't really know the answer. We have an exhibit that says one thing, a voicemail that says something else, but neither of them address all of the businesses in the shopping center. So maybe we should continue this to a future meeting and ask the applicant to clarify the situation, preferably in writing, and put it on the agenda for the next meeting. I would entertain a motion to that effect if someone wants to make it.
Through the chair, Vice Chair Doran, if I could just add a couple clarifications. So that parking in the front is partially in the right of way, so it doesn't belong to any business. It can't be assigned. So that's one thing to note. The other is the La Hacienda parking lot belongs on a different lot. And right now that lot and the one, the current subject lot are owned by the same person, but they in the future could have two owners, one for each lot. And so any kind of promise of using that La Hacienda parking lot is only kind of just kind of a way to deal with this substandard parking lot, but it's not something that can be guaranteed. It's just kind of a way to make things work right now. So I just wanted to add those 2 points of clarification.
Thank you, Ms. Sandmeyer. I mean, I suppose it is within the power of the owner to do something permanent about that. He could grant an easement that would run with the land, but I don't suppose that's been on the table yet. And I see Commissioner Kennedy definitely.
I lied. Yeah, I totally lied. This is a slippery slope because we see this exact scenario in Bellhaven. When developer 1 and developer 2 say we want to bundle these, we want the two properties to work together and it's different owners and we're going to borrow some of their parking. And I think that we should apply the exact same test to this that we apply to that. It's a much smaller piece. It's a much smaller amount of parking in question here, but it's the exact same concept. So I think for all fairness, we should continue this until we have a much better understanding of what is bundled, what is unbundled, what's being promised to whom and how many spaces, because we cannot continue to have a double standard of how we approve projects or don't approve projects moving forward. So now I won't say anything else.
Would you like to make a motion to that effect, Ms. Kennedy?
I'll make a motion that we continue this project until we have some additional information about the specific tenants and the lease agreements and what parking is promised to them and on which lots and on which parking lots, and whether or not the parking in the right of way appears in any lease document claiming it as available to those tenants.
Before I entertain a second, I think we have some wisdom from Chair Riggs that might cast some light on this question.
Thank you. I don't know how much wisdom it amounts to, but I can share that in the past, I have actually asked Kathleen Daly as sort of our Willows neighborhood source of knowledge, how this market is working in terms of parking. And as recently as a few days ago, she, besides expressing her support for the restaurant, also noted that informal though the parking arrangements may be on Minalto and Gilbert, there has always been ample street parking to back up any specific lot parking. So I was already inclined to support this project, but I was not aware that there was no written agreement, and more perhaps the staff would even want to recommend whether or not there should be a title encumbrance if some parking is going to be promised on one lot to another. It is absolutely true that things change in the world, and 5 years from now, these might be two separate owners who simply don't have that kind of agreement. So I have to agree with several speakers that although I quite support this project, I think this needs to be clarified. And my primary reason actually is that I think the project needs to be notified in such a way that the community understands that overflow parking is street parking. I don't expect that to be an objection, but I do think it's fit and proper that that be part of the staff report that people get to see and therefore would have the opportunity to come to this commission and speak.
Thank you.
And
Chair Riggs.
I will second the motion if that's appropriate, noting that earlier Mr. Barnes did also want to speak.
I think given that you weren't here for the whole presentation on this topic, I don't think you should either make motions or vote on this question, actually.
That's a good point of order. Thank you.
I think Ms. Sandemeyer wants to speak.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I just want to clarify a couple more things and then get some more direction if possible. So there are no parking spaces for the subject parcel. So the question of how many each suite has is 0. So we know that today. If the lease agreements were, said anything about the right-of-way parking lots, I think that would be, or parking spaces, that wouldn't be valid since those are not owned by the property owner. So with the motion to continue, it would be helpful for staff to know exactly, is it just the noticing or exactly what research would help, or kind of more guidance on what to do in the next 2 weeks or 4 weeks, whenever it comes back.
Well, I will defer to Commissioner Kennedy on that since she made the motion, but I would just observe that for me, I think clarification about the parking agreement would be very helpful. We've had concerns expressed from 3 other business owners in that shopping center, and the exhibit that we have only refers to parking for the restaurant, the applicant. So for me, that's the #1 question, getting clarification around that parking agreement. Commissioner Kennedy, I think you had some other things that you wanted.
Well, the parking agreement is really the biggest piece, because if to sweeten the deal of getting a particular type of tenant in there, you say, hey, listen, I've also got this other lot. I can give you those. I can give you some spaces in there. I'm not going to offer them to other people, but you can have them. That's patently unfair. That's first of all. And for us to not, this is really a due diligence question, right? I would say that no one on this commission could, given what we've just discussed, with enough questions about, what kind of deals are being made about the availability of whichever parking that is not street parking, we need to understand further how much parking is being, switched around and offered up, right? I think, again, what I want to say is that the project itself, great project, but the parking spaces that we're talking about, there's a fixed number of those. There are, people who work in the restaurant, right? They're the owners, right? There's all-day parking, there's not all-day parking. Not getting into, a full-on traffic study of who's coming in and when, but really around, are there enough parking spaces for the businesses to equally have parking spaces for patrons going to any of those suites and treating them all as equal? Because if one, so yes, so I would say we just we don't have enough information.
Does anyone else want to speak on this before we proceed? I think Commissioner Kale, I saw you first.
Yeah, I just have a different take on it. You know, the parking is a valid discussion and concern. However, it's, in my opinion, it's not really fair to burden the owner with delaying the project until the parking is sorted out, because you know, they already have their ABC license. They're ready to go. I think businesses are having a hard enough time. We don't need to delay this another couple weeks or potentially a couple months to make this happen. So I think this is something that we can deal with at a later basis. And frankly, I'm not sure that this is something that the Planning Commission needs to get involved in. This is something maybe the city and the owners can deal with. But I'm going to vote to support the approval of the use permit as presented.
Commissioner Barnes, did you want to add something?
I did. Thank you. Good evening. I've had the benefit of listening to my my colleagues' excellent input. I've been confused a little bit throughout the process. What we're being asked to approve is a use permit because of a substandard, because the subject property is substandard with regards to minimum parking requirements for the C2 district. So the delving into how the owner of the property writ large, the strip center, manages their parking, and whether it's fair or not fair or equitably distributed or not, particularly in light of the front being public right of way. I think our discussion is getting conflated. And while it may be a worthy cause to go down and try to sort out for the benefit of the other tenants what the arrangements are around parking, that's not what we're being asked. I mean, if we're saying that, for instance, the subject property, because it is substandard with regards to minimum parking requirements, and we want to say, okay, great, we've got business X, business Y, business Z in there. Business Z, the additive business Z happens to be a restaurant. The public right-of-way parking isn't enough. Then that's one way to approach this. But I see us as getting too far into the internal machinations of the shopping center itself, or the strip center itself, and you know what the owner's saying or not saying. So I don't necessarily see that in our purview. So I see the two issues being conflated, quite frankly, and it's a worthy issue, but I don't know that that is the charter of I don't believe it's the charter of the Planning Commission this evening with respect to this use permit. If it's to try to get more information on is it equitable or not, or what deals have the has or has not the owner made. That's not our purview. So for that, so I wanted to make that statement because I think we're conflating two things. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Riccardi.
If we voted to continue this matter, this is a question through the chair to staff, what happens next? And how soon would it come back to us in your estimation?
Guess that's Ms. Santamar, Mr. Turner, I'm sure.
Yeah, so the notice for the meeting in 2 weeks has gone out. So the soonest it could go would be in 4 weeks. But I think it would help staff also to understand if the commission is imagining something like a shared parking agreement that's done through a deed where it would remain once if there's a change in ownership. So I think it would help staff to have a little more direction of what exactly the commission would like to see in the next report and what kind of recommended conditions of approval.
If I could ask another question. So Are any of the uses of the other properties right now actually conforming regarding parking? Aside from Hacienda? So
No.
does Cafe Zoe have, I mean, do they have enough parking spaces for their use?
No, there's no parking spaces for that lot, so they're all
Right.
not conforming.
All right, so they're all out of conformance. So what we have now, if I can understand this, and since the last time I spoke, thank you, you've clarified a lot, is there are two parking lots. There is one that is next to Hacienda. There's one that is functionally the rear of the property. Those are owned by somebody. And that individual can, because they're private, I guess this is in the form of a question, that individual can make arrangements with whoever they want to be able to park there. Is that correct?
Well, I guess the issue is the La Hacienda parking, that's a different parcel. And so for now, it has the same ownership as the subject parcel. And so the owner can say who, you know, it makes sense for him to say, well, the restaurant patrons can park there, but it's not something that's binding because one of the two parcels could be sold to someone else and they may not agree to that. So if there's no deed restriction, they wouldn't have to honor that agreement.
Okay, and the parking lot that is in the back is part of this parcel? And who is in charge of determining how that is used?
Well, so that parking lot, it's more of kind of a rear lot area. I believe there's a power pole or some kind of obstruction in that alley. So it's difficult to use that rear parking and it's not striped. I believe the applicant has said that employees would park back there, but I don't think it's something probably where the public would park.
It's not my question, but we had a comment from the owner of West Bay that said that they go in and out of there in order to be able to make their business work. So does this mean that with this arrangement, there's a potential that you could have employee parking for this restaurant and the bike rack that is back there and block that business from being able to utilize its rear entrance, and that would be allowable?
I don't think that would be allowable because to block it because that rear area is shared. Chris might have some more information, and that's also something we can look into for the next time we bring the project back.
Yeah, so so that rear area, it's not considered a parking lot. There's no conforming parking spaces. Access is fairly limited. There is an old grant deed that grants the use of that area to the adjacent property. So that's where historically it's been used as sort of an informal shared area where maybe employees park, or you have the deliveries to the dry cleaner. So they're all allowed to use that space. And historically it's been up to them to up to the two property owners to come up with an agreement of how to use that space.
And is there an existing agreement? And how does this potential use of having employees park for this restaurant back there impact that agreement?
Nothing formal. There's no formal agreement anywhere. It is just informal agreements between the owners.
Okay.
Okay. All right.
So we do have a motion before us. I don't know, Commissioner Kennedy, if you want to clarify further the motion at this time. We can't hear you. I can't hear you, Commissioner Kennedy. I can see your lips moving, but I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. Hold on. sorry, I have a 6-year-old that I have to put to bed. So I think any further clarification would really further muddy what we're attempting to do here. And I think what we're attempting to do is to get some clarity, because any arrangement outside of a formal lease agreement and a formal agreement that is binding means that the owner of the lots could promise those spaces to every one of those suites, right? Resulting in a real mess, right? So I do think that I think it's important for us to have all of the information present at the table when we're making this decision to approve or to not approve this project, based on all of the inputs that we would hold any other project accountable to, right? And parking is a significant piece to all the projects that come before us week after week after week, right? And so it's not I don't think we're trying to make a case of anything. I think we're just trying to set one standard. We don't have enough information. So I would just say we need further clarification about the parking for this particular business. And that might mean that the owner has, and whatever that is, we need clarification. I can't tell you what that is. I don't think we should be setting that up. We just need to have further clarification.
Okay, so we have a motion before us to continue the application pending further information. Do we have a second? Without a second, the motion fails. Do we have any other motions? Anyone else want to make a motion? Commissioner Kale, you want to make a motion?
Sure. I'll make a motion to approve the project as recommended in the staff report.
Do we have a second? Commissioner Barnes.
I will second Commissioner Kale's motion.
Okay, I'll call the roll. Commissioner Barnes. We have a motion and a second. Commissioner Barnes, will you vote?
Yes, I'm sorry. Thank you. I'm having a thinking moment. I'm wondering out loud to put in there a recommendation. No. Yep. I withdraw that. Yes. I'm an aye. I'm a yes.
Commissioner DeCarty.
I'm a yes.
Commissioner Kennedy. Commissioner Kennedy, are you going to vote? Commissioner Kennedy.
I'm sorry, I had to reconnect. So I missed the vote so far. So where are we?
We have 2 in favor. I actually went a little bit out of order because I should have called Commissioner Kale. I've not called on him yet. So Commissioner Barnes and DeCarty in favor so far.
I am not in favor of supporting this project, so.
Okay, 1 no. Commissioner Kale?
Yes.
And I'll vote yes. So the motion carries 4 in favor. Commissioner Kennedy against, and Commissioners Barnes, DeCarty, Doran, and Kale in favor. With that, I will hand the chair over to Chair Riggs.
All right, thank you, Vice Chair Doran. And congratulations to the applicant. That concludes item F1, and we'll move on to item F2 on the agenda tonight. This is a use permit application and architectural control applicant John Conway for the Chevron station at 1200 El Camino Real. This is a request for a use permit and architectural control review for modifications to an existing Chevron gas station located in the SP ECR/D, that's the El Camino Real Downtown Specific Plan District. The project consists of enclosing existing automotive service bays to expand the existing convenience store operations. The project would modify the location of beer wine sales relative to what was approved by the 2019 by the Planning Commission. And Ms. Khan, do you have any additions to this description?
Good evening, Chair and
Good evening.
commissioners and members of the public. I do not have any updates to this project. I am available to answer any questions. So is Mr. Conway and the architect, Mr. Bill.
Thank you. Mr. Conway, do you would you like to speak to the project, or shall we rest on the staff report?
This is Bill Gutzel. I can speak to any particular concerns that you have regarding the project. I am with CJW Architecture, and thank you, Chair Riggs and commissioners, for hearing us tonight. For a number of years, Menlo Chevron has been in business since 1975. They renovated the station in the 2003-2004 era to the station that is current. They have an existing gas service and convenience facility. It's approximately 2,100 square feet total, with a 1,500 square foot fueling canopy, for a total of about 3,790 square feet of developed property there. What they would like to do right now is take the existing convenience store, which is about 740 square feet, and convert the existing 3 service bays, which is amounts to about 1,400 square feet, and convert that to convenience store area. This is in response primarily to COVID-19 and the decline in serving the public from a service station, automotive repair standpoint. But there is an influx of, obviously, additional residences in the area, renovated hotels in the area that Menlo Chevron would like to be able to continue faithfully serving their neighboring properties. They have done a very good job of controlling and being sure that the alcohol sales that they were provided for a license for, that the off-sale license is controlled in such a way, much the way that they have been able to control cigarette sales, and they have not had any issues with the alcohol sales to date. So the proposed project provides primarily interior TI work, wherein the existing service bays would be stripped of all of the service equipment that is in there, renovated to have new finishes, floor finishes, interior finishes, and whatnot, and then new food service equipment to be able to provide drinks and coffee and brats and whatnot to the customers. The exterior area would have the existing front sliding door removed and replaced with existing or with new aluminum and stucco infill panels, and the building would be repainted to follow the Extra Mile brand. The Extra Mile brand, as you have seen, is an offshoot of the Chevron system and is their convenience store arm. By their operating hours currently are from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. for 16 hours a day, 365 days a year. By contractual obligation with the Extra Mile program, they would like to increase those hours from 5 a.m. to 11 p.m. for a total of 18 hours, 365 days a year. After regular convenience service store hours, existing fuel service currently is available 24 hours a day with credit card payment at the pump, and that would remain available to patrons who want to purchase fuel after convenience store hours. As I mentioned earlier, the Menlo Chevron did receive a approval from the Planning Commission a few years ago for type 20 beer and wine license, and they'd like to continue with that. Obviously, they will increase the size of their merchandising area, including their cooler area. Similar percentage of the cooler area will be occupied for beer and wine, other beverages, including soft drinks and whatnot, energy drinks and whatnot. The alcohol sales, if that is a question in anybody's mind, alcohol sales are regulated typically by the Alcohol Beverage and Control jurisdiction, and would not be allowed between the hours of 5 a.m. and 6 a.m. in the morning. Per a planning department inquiry previously, there was a request for an estimate of the number of people that might frequent the store at a 5 o'clock hour, which is a little bit different than what they're operating at right now. Currently, they have one employee who opens the store, and between 5 and 6 a.m., there's outside pumping of gas only right now, between 1 to 5 customers. They from the 6 to 7 time frame, there's about 1 to 10 customers outside and inside. We might expect a little bit of increase in the numbers there, but not a tremendous amount. With regard to community outreach, Mr. Conway has walked the neighborhood and provided flyers to his neighbors, and to date we have not received any positive or negative comments one way or the other. The project, by the way, was also noticed to all the neighbors through the city. And with that, I'll entertain any questions if you'd like.
All right, thank you, Mr. Gutzel. And so yes, questions or clarifying questions at this time. Ms. Kennedy.
So just a clarifying question. So with the conversion of the former automotive bays, are there in those bays? Full disclosure, they were my auto mechanic, but I don't remember if there was an oil pit in the floor there. So is there a subterranean oil pit? Or those, or just was it the hydraulic lifts but no pit?
My understanding is that oil containment system has been removed.
And is it required to undergo any sort of environmental review for those spaces to make sure that there are no contaminants?
Mr. Conway can probably address that more
Perfect.
clearly for you.
Mr. Conway, please.
Are you referring the hydraulic hoists in the service bays? Yeah, we're going to have those removed, and we were going to have the soil tested.
So none of that has been done yet?
Not done yet.
Okay. So this project would be approved with contingent upon all of the necessary environmental review processes being and tests being done, correct? Through the chair to staff.
Correct.
Okay.
Which would be likely be also a condition of the building permit.
Yes, no doubt. Mr. Kale.
Me?
Yes, did you have a comment to make?
I did not.
Oh, all right. Any other questions at this point before we go to public comment? Mr. Barnes.
Thank you. Would the applicant be so kind as to state the business reason for stretching from the current hours of operation of what I see to be 6 to 10 and stretching that from 5 to 11? What's the thesis behind that? What's the incremental business you would do in that time frame?
You want me to answer that, Bill?
Yeah, I can answer that. That's a contractual obligation that Mr. Conway would have with the Extra Mile program. They like to see their stores open for a certain number of hours per day. for the benefit of serving their customers and selling a certain amount of product from time to time.
Mhm. Thank you.
All right. Seeing no other hands raised, we will move on to public comment. For those of you attending this this meeting, if you would like to make a comment, please look for the hand icon on your control panel. And if you'll click on that hand icon, that will alert staff to the fact that you would like to speak to the project. And we will connect you immediately. And so we'll give a moment for anyone who might be interested to look for that hand icon and click. I'll note meanwhile that we limit our public speaking to 3 minutes and ask that you state your jurisdiction. In other words, for example, if you're a resident of Menlo Park or of the county or elsewhere.
If I may, through the chair.
Yes, Mr. Tapia.
Yeah, for those who are listening via telephone, if you click *9 on your keypad, that'll also notify staff that you do have a comment at this time. And for the record, Chair Riggs, I'm not seeing any comments currently, but we can give it a minute or two to see if any come through.
All right, thank you. I think we've gotten close to a minute here of since our announcement. We'll give a little bit more for possible telephone connection. Again, that was simply *9 on the telephone that you are using to attend the Zoom meeting. All right, so lacking that, I will close public comment and we'll bring it back to our commissioners for either further questions or for comments, starting with Mr. Doran.
Yeah, I would just like to express my support for the project. I think that, you know, if we're going to have a vital retail sector in Menlo Park, we have to let the businesses decide where the business is. And as much as I hate to lose the mechanic services, I think we have to respect the decision of the owner that there's more business for a convenience store, especially with the apartments going in nearby. I think there's going to be a lot more pedestrian traffic around there. And, you know, it seems to me that it's a useful amenity for the community. I like the plan. I think it looks nicer than what's there now. So I'm in favor of the application as written.
Thank you. Any other comments on the project? I think maybe Mr. Kale and maybe one other, Mr. Barnes, were present back when we, and Mr. Ducardi, I think, when we earlier approved. Mr. Barnes, yes. Audio.
Thank you. I may be having a senior moment here, but I am, I'm trying to square that previous approval. And as I'm reading through the staff report, am I missing something? I don't see a reference to the last time we spoke about this, other than to say the project would modify the location of beer wine sales relative to what was approved in the 2019 by the Planning Commission. So I guess I could go through the chair to staff for a confirmation, so I make sure I'm not losing my mind here. This is a project that when we last saw it, all we talked about was beer and wine sales and whether the hours, the ability to sell it, and whether it could be a 6-pack or single or sold as singles. Do I have that correct in terms of this project?
Commissioner Barnes, I do reference the 2019 Planning Commission approval of the use permit to allow the sale of beer and wine for off-premises consumption at the existing convenience store. This is in page 2 of the staff report, the second paragraph.
Yes,
last
yes.
two lines.
Okay. Right. And then when we, so wasn't, we did an architectural review at that point in time, is that correct? It was simply
Correct.
for
There
beer and
was-
wine?
Yes, it was solely for beer and wine.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you. I have that. And I see the part about here being contractually, the expansion of business hours is as a result of contractual obligations, should we honor that? So I will say that at that last meeting, I had an aha moment where I came in with a puritanical view of, wait a minute, you got to sell things in 6-packs. If people are buying singles, the world's going to go upside down. And some of my more enlightened commissioners said that's ridiculosity. If you buy only one, chances are you're going to get less hammered than if you buy a 6-pack of Mickey's. So I was like, oh, that makes all the sense in the world. And I'm really glad that we did that. And I think that that has in fact borne out with, lack of issues with this project. So with that in mind, I am supporting this project. I think get on with it, get with the repurposing of the facility. If that is what your business calls for, you are the owner of that parcel. And I think that the way that you have proposed your plans for architectural control are fine with me. I think you do a fine job in bringing forward a project which will work for what it is you're converting and where you are and what you'll be doing there. So for that reason, there may be other commissioner comments, but I'll put a motion forward, subject to lots of other commentary from other commissioners, to approve this project per the staff report.
All right, thank you. And do we have other comments or a second, Mr. DeCardi?
Yeah, I agree with my fellow commissioners, and I will second Commissioner Barnes's motion.
All right, any other comments before we vote? All right, and just for the record, I'm inclined to agree and particularly appreciate the way Mr. Barnes phrased it. So we will vote. The motion on the table is to approve as presented in the staff report. Mr. Barnes.
Yes.
And Mr. DeCardi.
Yes.
Mr. Doran.
Yes.
And Mr. Kale.
Yes.
And Ms. Kennedy.
Yes.
And I am a yes. So of those present, we have a unanimous decision with Commissioner Kate absent tonight. Congratulations, Mr. Conroy.
Thank you very much. Appreciate the effort from everybody's standpoint. Thank you.
Well, we appreciate having the architect here who did our classy new fire station downtown.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you, commissioners.
You're welcome.
Appreciate
All right,
you.
we'll move on at this point to item F3. This is for an ordinance amending section 16.43.070, 16.44070, and 16.45070 of Title 16 of the Menlo Park Municipal Code. This is our charges to review and consider adoption of a resolution recommending that the City Council, excuse me, of the City of Menlo Park adopt an ordinance amending those 3 sections of Title 16 of the Municipal Code to establish an in lieu payment. The ordinance would allow an applicant for bonus level development to elect to pay the value of a required community amendment in lieu of constructing, operating, and or maintaining the community amendment itself. And Ms. Chow, are you present tonight?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good evening.
Welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me this evening. I'm Deanna Chow, Assistant Community Development Director, and I'll have a brief presentation for you this evening to review the item before you as described by Chair Riggs. So maybe, I think I was going to be given controls, but Vaughn, if you have it up, I can just tell you when to go to the next one, and that might be just as easy to do.
Okay, I can do that too.
Okay, perfect. So I think if you go into presentation mode, we'll be ready to start. Great, thank you. So this evening we'll be presenting to you an ordinance amendment related to community amenities. Next slide. Great. So just a little bit of background. So we're focused on community amenities as part of the Bayfront area that was established in 2016 as part of the general plan update, which created 3 new zoning districts: the O Office, LS Life Science, and RMU Residential Mixed Use zoning districts. And really, this was an opportunity to create a live, work, play environment. As part of those 3 new zoning districts, a number of different design and development standards were established, and one of the regulations were for bonus level development, the requirement for community amenities. And we saw this contribution towards community amenities part of not only the policies and goals and objectives, but really one of the overarching guiding principles for Connect Menlo. Advance forward, we do have a number of projects that I know the Planning Commission has seen. We have 10 bonus level projects, one which you just saw and approved at 111 Independence. So we have a number of additional projects remaining that are seeking bonus level development. In October of 2020, the City Council created an ad hoc subcommittee. So this was at the time Mayor Taylor and Council Member Nash, to look at the community amenities list a little bit closer. And so the charge of the subcommittee was to review and potentially recommend modifications to the community amenities list, do an inventory of citywide development, and also to maintain the amenities list data. Next slide. More recently, this last month in April, the City Council conducted a study session with the recommendations from the City Council subcommittee. And so they highlighted 4 key recommendations. The first is to adopt a revised community amenities list. The second is to adopt an in lieu fee. The third is to adopt a gatekeeper application process. And the fourth is to establish a community amenities working group. The focus of tonight's ordinance amendment is focused on adoption of an in lieu fee, and then also a modification to also adopt a process for negotiated community amenities through a development agreement. The other items are part of the work plan for staff as part of this upcoming fiscal year. So the City Council will be continuing to review those other items: the community amenities list, the gatekeeper process, and the establishment of the amenities group. So next slide. So again, the 2 options, or the 2 additions, modifications to the community process, is the adoption of an in lieu fee payment and the development agreement option. So currently there is the adopted community amenities list, and applicants must choose an amenity to implement as part of their project, either on or off site, from that community amenities list. There are also 2 other provisions currently in the code. One is a fee payment option, but that would require the City Council to adopt a fee, and that has not yet happened. And so that is not currently an option. And the third option is a development agreement option, but it is to do amenities from the list. And so with these 2 revisions, the one is to adopt a fee that would be 110% of the community amenity value. And the second is to do a negotiated development agreement for items that are not on the list. So that would be the key difference. There are no other changes to the community amenities provisions, so you can still choose an item from the list, and there are no changes to the methodology for determining the value of the amenity. So before you this evening is to make a recommendation to the City Council on the proposed ordinance through an adoption of a resolution. Would like to make one edit to the resolution, and that is an update to section 6, which is the compliance with CEQA. So would like to add an additional CEQA finding for, so as noted in the italic section here. So approval of the resolution is not a project under CEQA because it has no potential for resulting in a physical change in the environment. So we just wanted to add that section to the Planning Commission's resolution as well as for the City Council resolution after the first reading. I'd also like to remind the council as a resolution, we would need a majority of the Planning Commission body to vote for the motion in order to pass. Okay, next slide. And then just the next step. So following the Planning Commission's recommendation, the City Council is anticipated to conduct its first reading on June 8th, followed by the second reading on June 22nd. And then if adopted, the ordinance would become effective 30 days thereafter. So, and just I think one clarification also for a number of projects that are under SB 330, they will be able to follow the existing community amenities list. And then I guess the community amenities list is not changing, but they would still follow the existing process, but have the option to pay for under the new ordinance as well. But our city attorney, Nira Doherty, is also available to help answer any questions as well this evening. So that concludes my presentation. I don't know if Nira has anything to add for this evening.
I don't. Thank you, Deanna. I just wanted to show my face so you all know that I'm here, and it's nice to meet some of you that I didn't have the opportunity to meet last week.
All right, thank you, Deanna, and thank you, Ms. Doherty. So I'm going to start with clarifying questions if there are any, and then we'll want to move right into public comment. Yes, Mr. Barnes.
Yes, thank you. Through the chair, clarifying question to staff. I am looking at page 3 under the in lieu payment option, and I'm going 1, 2, 3, 4 paragraphs down, and I'll read the sentence. It says, staff is recommending that the in lieu fee be inclusive of an administrative fee to administer the community amenities program and implement projects as directed. Could you say a little bit more about the netting out of that fee and how that gets rolled into, or what it gets rolled into and what it gets netted from, or the mechanics of it?
Sure. So the in lieu fee, the administrative fee that would be a part of the in lieu payment can be imposed to offset costs to the city in implementing the community amenities program. And in this case, the in lieu payments would be collected, and the city would presumably be implementing the community amenities themselves. And that work and that program would account for the city's costs in conducting that work. So the city can only collect as much in fees as it is necessary to offset its own costs. And so instead of doing some sort of fee study to better understand precisely how much it will cost the city to administer the in lieu payments, the city is proposing including a 10% administrative fee, which would be reduced if it costs the city less to actually do the administration that I just described.
So is in effect, if I just do my math, based on formula, community amenity is worth $1, the applicant gets charged $1.10, and up to 10 of those cents gets allocated back out to the city for doing its administrative work. So the net community amenity amount still remains $1. Is that the basic math?
That's right. And we anticipate that it will be less than 10% in your hypothetical, in which case the remainder of the 10 cents will go back to the actual community amenity. And then the amenity would be, would receive more than the $1 under your hypothetical.
Right. Thank you. And one more question, if I may, through the chair. This is a question also to staff, and it relates to, for instance, for the in lieu fee, the cash payout being prior to building permit issuance, which is earlier than you would see, for instance, if I'm reading this correctly, earlier than you would see if it was an in-project amenity, which you had to effectively bond out prior to final building permit issuance, if I'm understanding the payment timeline. So my question is the in lieu fee due earlier in the project? Because I think I'm reading it as being at the time of building permit issuance. And is, if I put a childcare center into a building, my time of actually showing the money on that, or whatever it's going to take for my build out, is actually later on down the line, coming at a time of building permit final. A, am I understanding that correctly? And B, I'd love that. So I'll just take a two-part question. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yes. So the fee as proposed would be due at the time of, or collected at the time of building permit issuance. And that is similar to how we collect other fees, such as the transportation impact fee and the, if applicable, the below market rate housing fees. So fees would be paid prior to that. And then if an amenity was to be part of a project, whether on-site or off-site, there is construction time associated with that. If it is something, as in your example, a child care center, and if it was built part of the project, so it would be brought online concurrent with the project being finalized. That would be the intent. If there are other instances where, you know, it's built off-site and just the construction alone would take longer than, say, the typical project itself construction, there may be other milestones or thresholds, that performance measures that the project would need to meet in order to show a good faith effort. And then, you know, at what point would the amenity be implemented? But yes, that would typically could occur concurrent with if it was a physical construction type project.
Okay, thank you. Then as a follow-up to that first part, impact fees are due at the time of building permit issuance, BMR fees. Is it customary, is it also best practice to do the in lieu fees? Is that generally when it's done for a community amenity as well as, for instance, an impact fee, to do it at the time of building permit issuance? Is that commonly what's done for these types of assessments, for these type of payments?
Yeah, I think it's fairly typical.
Okay. Thank you. Those are my two questions.
Thank you, Mr. Barnes. Any other questions before we see if there's some public comment? Yes, Ms. Kennedy.
Just clarification, we seem to seamlessly use the word public amenity and community amenity, and they're not the same thing. So this is like a real thing for me, like, you know, the public, some future public, general public that, you know, will come and enjoy the project, and the community is the community that is being impacted by the work that is being done, right? And I think those are two very, 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 very separate things. That's number one. Number two, I'm wondering if, you know, in this is a generalized sort of statement, if you will, in the list of community amenities, I really wish we would take an approach like a tic-tac-toe board. Once X number of cafes have gone into any adjacent developments, that box is done. Cafes, you can't stick another cafe in. Like, you can't come in with like your red pen and put a red X in the square box that already has a blue and a green in there. Is there a way to, a democratic way to remove a public amenity option from adjacent developments if it super saturates any one neighborhood with an amenity that really isn't an amenity, that it's the cheapest thing you can stick in there and call it a public amenity, call it a community amenity. So those are my two sort of general statements.
Ms. Chow.
So maybe I can address this, and then I don't know if City Attorney Doherty also had something, but so there already currently is a provision similar to that. So a community amenity should only be provided once and then removed from the list. And I think the intent was similar to what you were saying, so that it wouldn't be oversaturated with one particular type of community amenity. I would say there's probably some flexibility in, there was street improvements. So we know that there's multiple streets in the city, and that one development probably could cover all the street improvements, whether they were beautification or other sort of enhancements. So that might be considered different. But, and maybe even with retail, there might be some differences between like a cafe or other types of services, but any one particular type that is addressed currently in our ordinance, and that's not being proposed for any changes tonight.
All right, additional questions? All right, let's move on to public comment. And again, for those who are participating via Zoom and would like to make comment on this particular project, which is zoning amendment, a code amendment to allow in lieu fees in place of the building and or operating of community amenities associated with development in our Bayfront district. You can so indicate by clicking on the hand icon on your Zoom control panel, or if you're attending by phone, by keying, and I'll ask Mr. Tapia to confirm. I believe it's #9.
It'll be *9, Chair Riggs.
*9. Oh, I'm so glad I asked you to confirm. So that would, in either case, would allow staff to know you would like to make the comment, and you would be, thanks to the wonder of electronics, immediately acknowledged. And this would be your opportunity to speak. We invite speakers to speak up to 3 minutes, although certainly one need not take the entire time. And we do ask that you begin with your name and your jurisdiction of residence.
At this time, Chair Riggs, I'm not seeing any comments, but as usual, actually, I spoke too soon. We did just get a virtual hand. With your permission, I would like to go ahead and introduce the speaker.
Wonderful, please.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and introduce Lynn Bramlett. Forgive me if I mispronounced your name. You can just, again, please state your name, first and last name for the record, and where you live, or your political jurisdiction.
Good evening, Planning Commission. This is Lynn Bramlett. I'm a resident of Menlo Park, specifically in District 3. And I appreciate that there is movement on this topic, because I've long considered this a broken process that's very overdue for fixing. So this is a step forward. I would prefer not to have in lieu fees, but if you have them, I think they should be in a fund that's set aside, designated for Bellhaven, because I believe the amenities should benefit the community being impacted, and that would be Bellhaven. I personally think the amenities should be established before a development starts. I know there's been some projects coming before council where the project lists right in it that the project is proposing bonus level development, although the proposed community amenity has not yet been identified. So I also note that in the original resolution 6360, there is a list of community amenities based on a survey, and I don't see any price tags or process for these. So I would like to see more detail in connection with Ms. Chow's comment about how these are checked off and not used again, because I haven't actually seen anything like that. So I appreciate that you're working on this. I know that this is outside of the scope, my final comment, but later on, I think there also needs to be a public benefit process. So this has been a topic that's come before the council anyway, and maybe the planning commission. So it's outside of the M2 area, but in other areas, developers want to build at a bonus level, and it's all rather vague in terms of what is the benefit, the process, etc. And so I appreciate your conversation tonight. I may follow up to re-forward a memo I wrote recommending something related to that. But for now, thank you that this project's being moved forward. And I do appreciate the work of Vice Mayor Nash and also now Council Member Taylor for moving this ahead.
Thank you, Ms. Bramlett. And Mr. Tapia, do we have any other potential speakers?
At this time, Chair Riggs, I'm not seeing any other members of the public who would like to comment.
All right, at this moment, I think we can close public comment since we had a couple of minutes of opportunity there, and bring it back to our dais for discussion, starting with Mr. DeCarty.
I do have through the chair, a follow-up question for staff, and I appreciate the clarifying questions earlier. City Attorney Doherty, you, in your exchange with Commissioner Barnes, noted that the 110% level is trying to find some pathway to be able to get the true cost for the city in administering the effort without having to have it float or to do a case by case or all of that. And that if it was less and you anticipate it to be less, that the remainder would go back to the project, to the amenity. My question is there discretion to actually have the amenity level itself set at some percentage that is above 1-to-1? Is there discretion for the city or city council in this to have it be at 120% plus your 10% bogey for the administrative costs?
Yes, there is. So in lieu payments or in lieu fee programs often require a fee that is a slightly different value than the underlying improvements or amenities that are required to be established.
And for right now, we have before us a proposal that's 1-to-1. Earlier on page 3, the same page Commissioner Barnes was referring to, there was a poll out, and I guess if you could clarify, it sets at 120% level. I realize that it's a little bit comparing apples and oranges, but was that the principle at the time behind that set, that it was 120% over 100 that was going to the community amenity?
Yeah, I can speak to the current language of the ordinance. I was not around when the ordinance was adopted, so I might turn to Ms. Chow to describe the prior intent. But what the current version of the ordinance says is that construction of the amenity itself is preferred as to the payment of an in lieu. Well, it calls it an impact fee, but it's actually an in lieu payment or fee. And presumably, because of that policy preference, the amount of the contemplated fee was directed to be established at 120% of the value of the community amenity. And there is a somewhat in-depth valuation process for community amenities that's already set forth in the community amenity provisions of the municipal code. So the proposed revisions before you tonight revise that section of the municipal code to take out the directive to include a 120% fee and instead replace it with a 110% fee as you've already described.
Thank you. As long as I'm speaking, I'll just offer a couple comments. I agree with Ms. Bramlett that the current system is not optimal for anybody. I applaud the city leadership, city council, and city staff for working to come up with a different solution. I think that's fabulous. I think having multiple options is probably important in all of this, and so support those as well. I think we have seen as a planning commission, we have wrestled with whether something is truly a community amenity or not. We have wrestled with the placement in the community of that community amenity. We've wrestled with the valuation and exchange between the developer and the city about the value of a community amenity. And we've seen developers, and I give them a lot of credit, who care about this community and who want it to be better and want to live up to the community amenity, work to be creative about what it is, and struggle to find the right kind of solution. And you can, for all sorts of reasons, including this isn't their primary business. And some have taken an extraordinary amount of time to get a good community amenity. Some have been concerned that a project was going to be delayed over the community amenity. So for all of those reasons, I think it's a really great idea to be able to address this. My bias on this is that it's actually probably better to give an option for the city to broker with organizations that are really good at delivering the types of community amenities we need to make that happen, than developers, especially one-off developers that could be coming into the community. On the other hand, I'll note, developers spend an awful lot of time trying to actually put the community amenity in place and try to shoehorn that into their project. And I suppose I'm speaking out of both sides of my mouth, but it seems to me perfectly reasonable and actually probably still fine for a lot of developers to pay more than a one-to-one in this. Ultimately, we are trying to support our community as part of a development, the entire community. And I, for myself, could imagine a scenario where a developer that has a fabulous idea, is ready to put in the time, does it as part of their project, great. But if they can't figure it out and it's a hassle for them, then it seems reasonable to pay more than to one into the city on top of the administrative fees. And for me, would be open to that in this mix. But that's the one question I have. The rest of this, I'm supportive of the city staff and city council leadership.
Thank you, Mr. DeCarty. Other comments or questions on this subject? All right, I will take a moment. The one concern that I had reviewing this proposal was similar to Ms. Bramlett's, that I would like to know that the fee did not end up in a general fund that might be steered by whatever happened to be the majority three of the council at that time. So I will ask just for clarification in case I missed it. If there were, under the current proposal, if there were a project that council wanted to do that was, say, at the intersection of Middlefield and Willow, for a project that was on Constitution, as currently written, would that in lieu fee be available for Middlefield and Willow? And I don't know if I'm addressing that to Ms. Doherty or Ms. Shao.
Yeah, I'll take a first stab at that, and then Deanna might need to supplement my response. The details surrounding the expenditure of in lieu fees are not contemplated or set forth in the ordinance. Those will be set forth by implementing regulations that are adopted by resolution of the city council. Sorry, you can hear my kids. And that, as to the the discretion to implement the actual community amenity projects through utilization of the in lieu fees. That will either be up to staff or council discretion, and that will be memorialized in the implementing regulations. So as to the part of your question regarding can the council choose or not, that hasn't been decided yet. And then as to the location of a proposed project, the utilization of the in lieu fees must be for the same purposes that the underlying community amenities program was established. So the fees will need to be utilized to offset impacts in the Bellhaven neighborhood. That's what the current ordinance says. And that provision of the ordinance is not being proposed for revisions this evening.
All right, but that, in your reading, that restriction would still apply? That, because it seemed a couple of minutes ago, you said there wasn't any restriction on council's use of the funds, but you are noting that the original intention remains, even with these revisions?
Yeah, I'm sorry if I was not clear. The details on how the funds are spent in terms of what portion needs to be spent on what kinds of projects, or whether staff or the council has discretion to expend the funds, those details have not been worked out. However, the detail that we know remains constant is the fees need to be utilized to offset impacts of development in the Bellhaven neighborhood. That the ordinance currently provides for that, and that's not being proposed for revision.
Wonderful.
I'm sorry if I wasn't clear earlier.
Oh, thank you very
I was
much.
just going to add to that, the language in the code for physical improvements does state that they need to be located within the areas between Highway 101 and the San Francisco Bay. And so as City Attorney Doherty mentioned, that language remains the same in the ordinance.
All right, thank you so much. Are there any other comments, Mr. Barnes?
Yes, thank you. A couple of comments. And one is kind of around to, one is about how we got this community amenities list and how it should inform any development of a new community amenities list. And this is coming from my time spent working, getting engaged in and being involved with the Connect Menlo process. The fundamental challenge that was faced was the ability to reach out to enough folks in the Bellhaven community to get a sense of what was needed there. And that's not as easy as you think it might be. I know that staff struggled mightily. Staff had to pull on additional consultants to do outreach into the neighborhood, to do outreach in Spanish to the neighborhood, to pull out those charts. You know, what we have in the community amenities list may be imperfect, it may look imperfect, but it was a result of really trying to convene people time after time after time in these community meetings and draw them out. Because what happens is you hear from the same good folks in the community over and over again, but when you get one layer below a few number of residents, pulling out that information is really difficult. So coming up with this community amenities list was really, although we may have issues with it and it's imperfect in many ways, it's the best that came out of a whole lot of community meetings in terms of how it is you pull out information or people. So with that said, what I like about the new process for the in lieu fee, should that get adopted, is it does also provide for a layer. So you've got the in lieu fee, and then you've got a development agreement, and then you've got the development agreement coming to Planning Commission, and then you've got the development agreement traveling on to City Council. So should the in lieu fees become something which get more and more predominant, the fact that there is a filtering mechanism in there, so that two things don't happen. One is certain voices in the community don't become the predominant go-to voices. Rather, it becomes a broader set of voices that you can hear from. And the ability for the Planning Commission to have that level of view into what the development agreement is, I think is very helpful from the standpoint of also offering something up to electeds that has a different filter on it rather than an elected filter. And I think that is a really important process for the in lieu fee. And I think the in lieu fee also solves going backwards to my earlier comment about it being an imperfect process, but it was the only process to come up with as many voices as we could, or as administration could, in light of a few voices always being present. It allows for that to add in the ability to pick from that list or go outside the in lieu fee list. To go outside the standard list that we have. And I think that flexibility is really, really important for this process. So those are my 2 points on that. I will say that the community, I will say that I am fine with the 110% or effectively 1-to-1 after you net out administration fee, for the reason that I don't think we need to disincentivize the in lieu fee for people for doing that, so we can have more flexibility on what it gets spent on. And if it goes back to the underlying question of, are we getting enough compensation for community benefits? I think the answer to that is plainly yes. You know, we've got a system in Menlo Park for the assessment of the amount to go towards the community amenity to be 50% of everything, the value, the appraised value of 50%, everything above the base level that gets built for a particular project. And that is, in the development world, an aggressive take back from development proceeds to a community amenity. That is not shy by any stretch of that is not shy by other standards. So I think we aggressively pull it back in terms of the money that the community receives as part of the community amenity amount. And then I don't think that we should disincentivize in lieu fee, because I think it compensates for that static list of community amenities on one hand, but allows for flexibility on the other hand, and then allows a filter in the middle for what's getting proposed and why it's getting proposed. And if you look at the noticing, whenever there's a DA, a development agreement, that is brought forward, there's public hearings, there's public noticing, there's community meetings. So nothing is going to get snuck by or otherwise railroaded through as a development agreement without transparency. And that gives me a level of comfort. Because anytime you start to create a pot of money, like an in lieu fee, without prescriptive uses for it, you invite interests to try to direct that money to things that they may be well intentioned about, but may or may not serve the broader. And again, not saying that anyone has ill interest, but you get a better, more transparent process. So for those reasons, I support the initiative. And in closing, it is prescriptive that the use of the funds needs to be specifically for the Bellhaven neighborhood. I do want to point out that's also true. It's my understanding for the traffic impact fee. And, I think what gets missed in this whole process is, in my neighborhood, the Willows, where, we may be a through to the through 101, through the Bellhaven, along Willow, and to parts further east, but we get the impacts of the traffic, and none of the amounts contributed from the development, which, however, have impacts on the community, flow back into this particular neighborhood. And I think that's not fair. I don't think it's well constructed, but I understand why it was constructed that way. But I don't think that's entirely fair, where the impacts are only seen in one specific area, where in fact, particularly in circulation and particularly in transportation, the impacts are felt in places far beyond. And it's the same way with the downtown specific plan as well. The community benefit, I forget what the exact term is in that situation, is only restricted to that area. And I think that's I just don't agree with that in principle. I think it should go to a broader sense of impact. So Thanks to staff for bringing this forward. I support this, and obviously waiting on other comments as well from my colleagues. I will, however, go ahead and make a motion that we do adopt this resolution, recommending that the city council adopt the ordinance amending, so on and so forth, per the staff report. So I'll put a motion on the table. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Barnes. I have a question, if I may. I'm sorry, go ahead, Ms. Chow.
May I just say something in response to Commissioner Barnes's comments?
Please.
Thank you. So I just wanted to clarify, and thank you for your comments and bringing forward a motion. I just wanted to be clear, though, what is being proposed before the Planning Commission this evening. So it's two different modifications. One is the in lieu fee option, which is not subject to a development agreement. It would be payment of an in lieu fee, the 110% of the community amenity value. And the second option would be the development agreement, which would be to negotiate community amenities that are not on the community amenities list. So those are two distinct pieces, and I just wanted to clarify in case there was any confusion on my presentation that there was a development agreement associated with the in lieu fee option.
So, Ms. Chow, if I can just put it in other words, the in lieu fee would be similar to a by right option, that it would not require a development agreement specifically. And
Correct.
potentially it might not include city council review.
That's correct. The payment of the fee is an option that developers would have available to them without any subsequent or further approvals.
Yeah, Mr. Barnes, that was important, I think, to clarify to your presumption of transparency.
Yes, and that was my understanding. Thank you. And I apologize if I didn't articulate that. My question is, these are not necessarily competing. These are two. This is a procedural question to the chair. We are looking to adopt resolution recommending amending sections 16.43, 16.44, 16.45. None of these are competing with each other. They're all amendments which can be concurrently or can be at the same time adopted, and they would all rev, but it's not, there's no either ors in this, correct? As I read this.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so I also have a follow-up with Mr. Barnes. You made the observation that a neighborhood can be impacted by the development in the Bayfront area that does not happen to be Bellhaven, and yet the implication of the current wording for amenities, it appears to restrict that to Bellhaven. So the Willows cannot benefit from such a fund, and those communities that are depend on access to Marsh Road cannot depend on those funds. Did you want to indicate any suggestion to City Council, since we are making a recommendation to City Council, that if a community is notably affected by development, that it should be on the table, or at least an option for an in lieu fee based amendment? That's not quite the right word.
So shall I respond?
Please.
You know, it's a tricky question. Like, we weren't, I'm always trying to address the question we're being asked, and that wasn't the question we were being asked. I do, however, feel passionately about this, and I think that it is, I don't think it's fair. And I think that other neighborhoods not getting a piece of the transportation impact fee or the community amenity funds, I don't know how to solve for that. I don't think it equitably distributes impact. The other side of the ledger, impact versus, you know, what pays for the impact at all. But I don't, you know, I don't know if I've got the. I don't know if this is the right forum for that. I don't know if I got the energy. If you Commissioner Riggs, were noodling in that direction, I think I could support that, but I don't know that I have it in me to fight that fight.
I find myself aware of potential impact because I access Marsh Road, but I don't happen to be of the inclination to say I'm observing a Marsh Road issue that I feel should be addressed this year. But it has certainly been predicted. So I think the flexibility would help. And what we might do as a commission is ask for clarification. Mr. DeCardi, I will get right to you. Because the wording regarding the application of the amenities is to the adjacent affected neighborhood. Then in parentheses, it says Bellhaven. But in fact, there are, as you and I have indicated, 2 additional adjacent potentially affected neighborhoods, at least 2 Menlo Park additionally affected neighborhoods. And then there are there's a county and a Redwood City potentially affected neighborhood too. So perhaps a clarification of that phrase that it should respond to the effects on an adjacent neighborhood, but then parenthetically only mentions Bellhaven.
Mm-hmm.
So I think this would be perhaps for Ms. Doherty.
I think that'd be fine. I'd want some clarification if the commission's intent is to revise the recommendation to reflect that change. That would be acceptable to me. I want to clarify the language before we read that into the record.
Mm-hmm.
But in some, Chair Riggs, yes, such a modification to the existing resolution can be made, and in essence will recommend that the City Council consider the proposed ordinance with the following changes.
May I ask that? I remember reading that, but where is that parenthetical that we're referencing? That references impacted communities, Bellhaven neighborhood. What? I'm sorry to interject, but what page can I see that on?
It was early on, but I did not make a bookmark.
And that's in the ordinance, I suspect.
The staff report, I think. You're catching me because this is something I observed but did not properly document.
May I ask through the chair of staff if you could point in the right direction?
Sure. I think maybe Chair Riggs is pointing to on page 1 of the staff report. It's language taken from our land use element under corporate contribution. Is that what you were referencing, Chair Riggs?
It may be, it may well be, yes. Yes, exactly. Such as Bellhaven for the growth north of US 101. And the such as does not necessarily, to me, indicate it shall be, therefore, for Bellhaven for growth north of US 101, but that is a primary example. But that would not be a clear and universal interpretation, I think, on my part. So that would be where I would invite clarity. And by inviting clarity, I would hope to stimulate the conversation, and then, of course, the resolution, the discussion and the resolution would be a city council matter. So at least for my part, I would not be saying, gee, I can't support this unless there's an expansion of the potential benefit areas. But I do think, as Mr. Barnes has pointed out, it's worthy of discussion, and I can certainly see how if I lived in the Willows area and endured for quite a number of years the traffic impacts of Willow Road, that this could be seen as unfair as if it's interpreted more strictly as Bellhaven.
I apologize for speaking potentially out of turn. So I think I have a motion on the floor, and I see what we're discussing here, and I would, and if my motion is still in motion, so to speak, I will offer to augment the language and offer that as part of my motion, if procedurally now is the time to do that.
Yes, I would say so, and then the second would either agree or not agree with that. And I don't want to put words in your mouth as the maker. So are you suggesting a review or clarification of that wording?
I am, and I agree, because I think it's a simple, and I think it's clean, and I see exactly what I would propose based on what is the language currently as it reads for corporate contribution, and I can make that for the record now. I can propose what the language would say.
Well, that would be terrific.
So I am going to reference this corporate contribution part that's in the background on page 1 of the staff report, and it says corporate contribution in exchange for added development potential, construction projects provide physical benefits to the adjacent neighborhood, parenthetically speaking, such as Bellhaven, now this is the add part, comma, Willows, or other such impacted neighborhood for growth north of 101. I'm not sure I know what for growth north of 101 is.
Well, given that based on 101 being an east-west, predominantly east-west freeway through Menlo Park, although I think it's something like east by northeast if you're a sailor.
So I would say that, I guess that insertion, it needs to be such as Bellhaven for growth north of 101, Willows, or other impacted neighborhoods. So I would just add on to, after for growth north of 101, I would add on Willows or other such impacted neighborhood. And
So
then complete.
I would like to encourage the emphasis on Bellhaven because, well, partly because that's self-evident, but also in sensitivity to a commissioner who is not here, and to, well, to all of my friends and advisors who have interest in that area. I would not want to imply that we want to dilute the primary focus of the amenities proposal. So perhaps we could put, well, perhaps we could say what we mean, if, or in my case, and say primarily Bellhaven, and perhaps add the adverb directly to impacted to try to reduce the possibility of a broad interpretation of impacted.
Sure. So, so in terms of just wordsmithing, we're dealing with what's in the parentheticals, and it would read primarily, such as primarily for Bellhaven for growth north of 101, comma, and secondarily for Willows or other impacted neighborhood.
Through the chair.
Yes.
I also I don't want to get us too far down the wordsmithing path, because the wordsmithing that is being proposed right now are revisions to the general plan, and the general plan is not before us this evening. So my understanding of the revisions that are being proposed would be to modify the existing community amenities ordinance to reflect, to change the current language, which provides in 1643, 44, and 450701 with respect to the community amenities being provided within the area between US Highway 101 and San Francisco Bay, to reflect the language that you're saying. But I want to make clear for the record, and we'll clean this up when I want to restate the motion for the record, but we're not modifying the general plan this evening.
That is understood. Yes, and trust me, I'm trying to keep it simple, just trying to insert for recognition. And I have no idea how my fellow commissioners are going to respond to this. So let me just, so that's understood. Thank you very much to the attorney. The recommendation for insertion would be along the lines of what I said. I'm certainly happy to repeat that. But if, as I stated it, is that problematic for the purposes of adding to the recommendation, adding as a recommendation? Said differently, can we do this?
I would just echo what City Attorney Doherty stated. So the language I think that you were looking to modify is language, one of the guiding principles in the land use element, and modifications to that is not before the Planning Commission this evening. That would be a general plan amendment to modify language. If there are other things that are in the zoning ordinance itself that might benefit from some clarification, I think we can look to that. But this particular language, and I would like to remind the commission, as you know, there are other areas where bonus level development can be developed. And so it's not just, this was, such as Bellhaven was an example, but there are other areas of the city that do have bonus level development that also have corporate contribution or community amenities, or also known as public benefits. So,
if I may, Ms. Chow, the challenge here is that, for example, if Willow Village were developed, the impact on the roadway named Willow would be very significant. And therefore the impact on the Willows neighborhood would, I think, be in our face. And that is part of the Bayfront development. Well, is it technically north of 101 though? Yes, it is. It's just not north of Bayfront Expressway. So therein lies the challenge, particularly for the Willows, and it's definitely on the horizon. Is there a way then, instead of, I mean, what we're doing here is not, we're not conditioning our recommendation so much as adding a recommendation. Is that a fair statement, Mr. Barnes?
Somehow we're looking to convey, we have no power, let's be honest about that. So we have no power to effectively influence anything as it relates to how the money is spent. Sure, and what we can do is provide a voice which says, hey, look, it would be nice if the impacted areas were also the recipient of some of the community amenity proceeds. Frankly, I don't know how best to do that. I think I started out with that. So let me, so I don't know how best to do that.
I can respond to that. Oh, I'm sorry, Commissioners, just through the chair to clarify. The recommendation that's before us tonight is a requirement under the California Government Code that before any revisions to the city zoning code take place, the Planning Commission needs to recommend that the council not make such revisions to the municipal code. So whether or not you qualify it as a conditional recommendation or a recommendation with changes to the resolution that's before you this evening, it doesn't really matter. What we need from you is what your recommendation is, thumbs up, thumbs down, and any changes to the ordinance or resolution that's before you tonight. And then we will take that recommendation and bring it to the city council, who may or may not take the Planning Commission's recommendation.
All right, so if we included this recommendation to clarify something in the general plan that is, quite frankly, not part of our charge tonight. Would it be best to simply separate that invitation from our approval tonight?
I think it would be best to structure it in the way that I mentioned before, which would be recommend further revisions to the ordinance to reflect the clarification that Commissioner Barnes referenced.
Well, thank you. Mr. DeCardi, I'm sorry, we have put you off a bit.
I appreciate the back and forth in the exchange. It's helpful to clarify. Just want to offer that on fairness and equity, for me, the piece that I like about where this effort is going, being led by the city council and city staff, is to provide a set of alternatives. And that my understanding is ultimately where these dollars go is something that our city council will determine, which makes sense to me. But to the extent that we are going to vote up or down on this, or we're going to put our thumb on the scale to suggest that something else needs to happen, for me, it would go to look at the question of intergenerational equity. And one of the things that I like about the in lieu fee is that it sets up the opportunity for our city council to do more than you can do with a developer who is putting a community amenity in place. And for me, it is the long history of redlining and racist zoning policies that puts us in this position here as a community, and is the core of what needs to be addressed when we're looking at community amenities. So I can appreciate the snapshot in time about the pressures on the Willows and other parts of our community. But if we were going to, as a commission, suggest where the city council should be putting its effort, for me, it would be at redressing or restitution for these longstanding racist policies that can go all the way down to the property owner. And there are models like Evanston, Illinois, that has just put such a program in place that would be available to us and that we should absolutely consider. So while I appreciate the commentary about the immediate pressure, for me, it's the intergenerational one. And I offer that because I think for simplicity purpose this evening, we could probably go around and around a very large mulberry bush. And perhaps we should have that discussion at some time, but I would urge us to consider the recommendation as presented by staff only. Thank you.
Comment appreciated. Mr. Barnes, should we simplify? I mean, I have to take the blame for having encouraged you to do something that was not actually technically our charge for this evening, and I apologize for that.
Yeah, I think it's a different, you know, I used the word conflating earlier. Let's just pull it out. It's something it's something that I have some juice on, but I don't know that my other commissioners do or should or could. So I will, for my purposes, I'll pull it out. And I'll just leave my, unless overwhelmingly the commissioners come back and say, no, stick it in, but I'll, with a second, but my first will go back to we'll go back to a very simple motion for approval.
All right, I'd like to second that motion to keep things moving. And are there any further comments? All right, seeing none, let us vote. We are voting to recommend to City Council adoption of these 3 ordinance changes. So, Mr. Barnes.
Aye.
Mr. DeCardi.
Yes.
Mr. Doran.
Yes.
Mr. Kale. Yes. Ms. Kennedy.
Yes.
And I am a yes, so we have unanimous approval. And at another time or in another way, I think we can take up the interpretation of that particular paragraph that is in the general plan.
Chair Riggs, may I just ask one, just to confirm the clarification on the motion? My apologies for not jumping in sooner, but that did include that update to section 6 on CEQA from the staff
Thank you.
presentation.
Thank you, yes.
Great, thank you.
All right, with that concludes our hearing items, and we move on to information items.
Yes, good evening again. So for the meeting in 2 weeks, we have a use permit for a single family home at 414 Claremont. And then we have a use permit for a childcare center at 135 Willow Road. And that concludes my updates, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Ms. Sandemeyer? All right, it is 9:33 p.m. and we adjourn this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you.